Okay, good morning. Okay, good morning. So we're holding now Pashas Vayera, the first mimer, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, Pashas Vayera. So this is a mimer, starts with Pasach Eliyahu. It's a very fundamental mimer, very known mimer in the world of Haskalah. I would say the Mayim Rabbim that we had a few weeks back, that was more an Avodah Dika mimer, a famous mimer in Avodah, and very down to earth, very practical. This mimer of Pasach Eliyahu is more of a mimer of intellect, Haskalah, has a lot of fundamental concepts that you see in Chassidus, the Sefirot, are in Seif. What are the Esther spheres? And Eretz Hashem, Naaseh v'Natzliach, to explain all the concepts clearly and slowly. So, just to start off, we say in davening, Mincha, Erev Shabbos, we say, I'll just read, Pasach Eliyahu v'Omer. Eliyahu opened and said, so it's a machlekes who exactly wrote Pasach Eliyahu, but let's just say it's Eliyahu Hanavi. So he says, Ribain Olmin, Master of the universe, Antu Chad, you are one, V'loi b'chushbon, but not in a numerical sense, which means that we're saying that Hashem is one, but when you say one, it means 1, 2, 3, 4. So Hashem is one, but you can't really count him. He's not one in the sense of counting. Then he says, Antu da apikas eser tikunin. You are the one who set forth, who brought out Eser Tikkunin, the 10 Tikkunin. What does Tikkunin mean? So the Alter Rebbe is going to say later that Tikkunin means like a garment. That you made 10 garments to express your Orin Seif. Now, in order to understand how the Eser spheres work, we have to tap into ourselves to see how the body functions. How does our intellect function? How does our emotions function? And once we understand how we operate, then we can understand how the Yud spheres operate. Okay, so we're starting at the beginning. So beforehand he says, Parshas Vayera Shayech Lepasik Erdano, which means in the Parsha, by the whole story of Stem and Amira, so the Eibishter said, let me go down and see what's going on. So you're going to see in the Maimer, he doesn't really discuss Erdano. But just like in the actual story, the Eibishter goes down. The idea of Pasach Eliyahu speaks about how the Orin Seif goes down into this world through the Eser sphere. So we'll start in the beginning again. Pasach Eliyahu. Eliyahu opened up and said, Antu Chad v'lei b'chushbon. Hashem, you are one, but not in a numerical sense. Antu da apikas eser tikunin. You brought out the 10. We're going to translate tikunin as a tachshit, like the Alter Rebbe says, as a jewelry. And we'll explain exactly what's the connection between jewelry and the Eser spheres. So the Alter Rebbe says, to understand this, why does the Zohar, why does Pasach Eliyahu call the Yud spheres in the name of Tikkunin, in the name of ornaments? So we have to understand the idea of how one's nefesh, how one's soul works. How does it operate? He says, Kihine, behold, a nefesh mitzad atzmo, the nefesh mitzad itself, he oid pashut, is a simple light, bliz chalkos, without any division. So a person has, like, imagine a battery. So how do you define a battery? A battery has energy. You can't really see that battery. Can't really see the energy. What do you see? You see a physical battery. But the actual energy you don't see. So the same idea, nefesh, is the soul that a person has, is eid pashut. It's a simple light without any division. Bliz chalkos, of seichel amidas, of intellect and emotion. And the intellect and emotion of the person, heimchinas levushin lenefesh, are garments for the soul. Shahanefesh yesh la seichel amidas, the nefesh, the soul of a person, has intellect and emotions, but they're not part of the actual soul of the person, which means that the nefesh mitzad itself is existing. How does the nefesh express itself? How could you have a relationship with the nefesh? That is through one's intellect and emotions. Now, the Alter Rebbe asks a question. He's saying over here, as seichel and midas of a person are not part of the nefesh. So he asks a question, Mashakosu b'tanya. So let's say, I think that Tzemach Tzedek wrote this mimer. So he brings down and says that, it says in Tanya, Shahanefesh atzma mischalekes l'seichel emidas, that the nefesh is comprised of, the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Gimel Tanya, in the beginning he says, that the nefesh is comprised of seichel amidas, shehem nikroim atzmius hanefesh, which they are called the essence of the nefesh. So the Alter Rebbe is asking, I'm saying over here in Torah Or, that seichel and midas are not part of the essence of the soul. They are a garment. They're an expression. They are the tools of how a nefesh could be expressed. But l'chayra, I say in Tanya that it is part of the nefesh. It is part of the soul. The Alter Rebbe says, "Ein ze el l'gabe machshava diber ma'aseh." This is only in response to machshava diber ma'aseh, thought, speech, and action. In other words, when you think about thought, speech, and action, legabe, the seichel and midas, so it's more etzem with the nefesh than machshava dibur ma'aser is. Shehein levushin nifradim mamish muhus nefesh, because they are garments, separate garments from the essence of the nefesh. Shehem b'chinas bria yitzira asiya, which these are the level of bria yitzira asiya. Omar, on this it says levushin tikkun loin, that he made garments to express himself, the inun bria yitzira asiya, which is in bria yitzira asiya. Aval aseicha v'hamidus. However, when it comes to the intellect and emotions, even though they are garments, they're not separate garments from the nefesh. Rather, they are like the vessels of Atzilus, the iu v'garmei uchad, which we know in regards to Atzilus. Atzilus is basically the way how Orin Soif could be manifested into the world. So when it comes to the Kalim, even though Atzilus is the Kali of Orin Soif to bring down the infinite light, nevertheless, the Kalim are one with actual Ein Soif. That's why they're called Atzmis v'lei Atzmis Mamash. So just to explain, what's the difference between, let's say, a ornament, jewelry, and a lavush, a regular garment? So a person puts on, let's say, a shirt, a jacket. So if you're going to take a knife now and cut the jacket, you're not going to feel anything. Why? Because the garment and the person is not one with the garment. It's separate entities. Masha'enkein, when it comes, let's say, to jewelry or things which are a little tighter on the body, if you're going to actually cut it or play around with it, you're going to feel it even more. So what the Alter Rebbe is saying is, he asks a simple shaila. He says, and I'm saying over here that when it comes to seichel and midas, it's not part of the etzem of the nefesh, and in Tanya, I'm saying it is part of it. So the Alter Rebbe says like this: really, seichel and midas are not part of the etzem of the nefesh. It's separate, like a keli, like a garment. But what type of garment? Not a regular garment like a lavush. Machshava dibur ma'aser, that's a lavush. That's so machshava dibur ma'aser, you can change, just like a garment, just like clothing, you can change in a second. When it comes to machshava dibur ma'aser, thought, speech, and action, you can change that. It's not easy, but you can change your machshava dibur ma'aser. Masha'enke, when it comes to seichel and midas, that's more one with the nefesh. And the Alter Rebbe is going to explain a little later how you see how it's one with the nefesh. But it's not the nefesh. When it comes to the energy, the nefesh is one. Seichel and midas is not part of it. But how is the nefesh expressed? That is through seichel and midas. That's a tool, just like you have a tool how do you express what you're thinking is through your mouth. How does nefesh express itself? Through seichel and midas. Okay, we're holding after the paragraph, Ela sheheni kroim b'shem tikunin. We're calling it we're calling the Sefirot in the name of Tikkunin, Boker Tov, in the name of ornaments, Tachshitin. Why? Because the soul is like beautified and enclosed in the actual Seichel Midas. So he says, he brings an ayah now from Targum Onkelos. Targum Onkelos says, Al Pasuk Yilbash Gever Simlas Isha, it says that a man is not allowed to wear a woman's garment. So the Targum says, in regards to Yilbash, it says, Yisakin Gevar B'tikune Itza, that a man should not wear a woman's garment. Now, what does he use? How does the Tikune Targum Onkelos, how does he touch up Lo Yilbash? He says Lo Yisakin. So we see that when it comes to garments, the Zohar calls it in the name of tikkun, which we said is in the way of like ornaments. Now, he says like this, tikkun. What does tikkun mean? Humaloshin tachshit. It's like a jewelry. Shemiskashit boy, that a person puts on jewelry, and it makes a person beautiful. And it becomes one with the actual tachshit, like it's part of the actual body. So he says, just like the nefesh with the actual body, even though the guf is one with the actual levush, the actual garments of the soul, nevertheless, so we're saying like this, even though the actual nefesh, you have the garments for the nefesh. What are the garments? Seichel Midas. So, l'chayra, just like when you wear clothing and you actually rip your clothing, your body doesn't feel it. But he says that when it comes to the levushim of the nefesh over here, it is different. Why? So he says, he brings an ayah. Nevertheless, the nefesh is affected by what happens to the body. So he says, when let's say the body is going to bang its finger, or like the lashon of the Gemara Chulin, nekev etzba'oi, that Rashbam says over there, that let's say when a foot actually goes on a rock and it starts bleeding. So what happens? Menageshes hanefesh. So what happens? When your foot goes on a rock and you're bleeding, your nefesh feels it. So too, when your nefesh decides that your hand should move, take it. When your nefesh decides that your finger or your hand or your foot needs to move, it moves. So I see that the nefesh and the levushim of the nefesh, the seichel and midas, are mamish one with each other. We don't see really a delay between the actual thought process, or when the nefesh wants to do something, to actually doing it. You don't find really a delay in it. Shemkein, if the nefesh and the seichel and midas of the nefesh were not one, there would be some delay between the actual rutzin of the nefesh to actually fulfilling it. We see that there's absolutely no delay between when the nefesh wants to do something to actually doing it. So the Alter Rebbe brought two rayas over here. Number one, I see that the nefesh and the levushei nefesh are mamish intertwined, because when the body is hurt, the nefesh feels it. When a person has a cut or a person has something in his foot, he feels it. So I see that the levushim and the nefesh are one with each other. And number two, when the nefesh wants to do something, he wants to lift up his hand, he lifts up his hand right away. There's no delay between the actual rutzin of the nefesh to picking up your hand. So I see the levushim and the nefesh are one with each other. So he says, this is because the guf, the body, is one with the nefesh. Therefore, the nefesh, it encloses itself in the levushim, and it becomes one with the levushim, like it's one. It becomes one with the nefesh. We're holding now 3 lines from the bottom. You've been out there. So we understand the same thing, just like we explained the example of an actual nefesh of a person. That a nefesh of a person has seichel and midas, and that's the actual, we said it's not garments, it's not like clothing, but rather it's like a tachshit, it's like ornaments. It's like jewelry. Just like jewelry makes a person beautiful, so too the levushim of the nefesh express what the nefesh is. And this expression, these levushim are one with the nefesh. So he says the same thing we'll understand by the seichel and midas of the nefesh. It's like a ornament for the nefesh. That the nefesh is beautified and clothed in the kelim. This is the tools for the nefesh. That through the actual nefesh being clothed in the seichel and midas, it's able to express itself. And he says, like an axe in the hold of somebody holding the axe. So you have the axe and you have the person holding the axe. So too, the levushim express the nefesh. In other words, this is when a person has the emotion of love, and the emotion to think. And all this again is the soul expressing itself through the seichel and midas, which is for somebody else. But mitzad the nefesh mitzad itself, the nefesh itself is higher than seichel and midas. Just to give a practical example, the hand has the ability to write. So are you going to say that it has, let's say, take an example of the aleph base. The chaf base oisius of the aleph base, it has the ability to write. But are you limiting it to only the chaf base oisius? No. It has the ability to write. You can write anything. How does it express itself in writing? Is through the aleph base. So mitzad, the actual koyach of writing, it's higher than the aleph base. So the same thing, l'nimshol, that the nefesh, even though it's expressed through seichel and midas, but it's really higher than the seichel and midas. So he gives another example. Sharei ha-seichel v'ha-midas, when it comes to the seichel and midas, he-mikabim shinuyim. The seichel and midas have different changes. Midas is katnus v'gadlus. When it comes to midas, the emotions, there's something called katnus and midas and gadlus and midas. Sha'kotin oyev dvarim ktanim. A child loves small things. When it comes to the intellect, calls man shemaskinim. As long as it gets old, chuli, and the Alter Rebbe is alluding to a Gemara. The Gemara says that that an old person, an amoretz, the older he gets, the more shvach his memory is. An older person learns Torah, he gets smarter. So we see that as the person gets older, he gets smarter. Now he says, that's not shaykh when it comes to the essence of the nefesh. When it comes to the etzem of the nefesh, the etzem cannot change. So what's changing? The kelim are changing, the vessels. It's like the famous example Chassidus brings by a blind person. Somebody who's blind. So is it the nefesh that's blinding him, or is it the kelim, the vessels that he has, that are not functioning properly, so he's blind? What's the raya? Because you see that a blind person can have a child who could see. So what do you see from here? You see that mitzad, the actual nefesh, it's still functioning. It's just the kelim, it's the vessels that the nefesh is enclosed in these kelim that affect it. So he says the same thing over here. Seichel and midas, they have shinuyim, they have changes. A child, he has katnus hamoichin. Now, the child has the moichin, he has the brain, or I should say, he has the nefesh over there. It's just the seichel, the kelim that he has are very limited. So since he has limited kelim, a child freaks out by the smallest things. As a child gets older and becomes an adult, He can handle more. Why? Because his kelim are expanding. But it's not to say that the nefesh of the person is changing as well. Fine. Let's go back. It doesn't change at all from the nefesh. Doesn't change from the body changing. So again, it's only the actual kalim that change. A zokin, he is changing, which means that the older he gets, his capabilities change. That means it's only in regards to the kalim, but not the nefesh. Also the seichel amidis, ain't it ha'oris hanefesh b'kechisel hamispashtes beguf ve'ene atzmis hanefesh amosi ella shanefesh pe'eles umispashetes b'keches va'oris halalu mikol mokem. Nevertheless, ain't in levushin ifradim mamish. So like this, even though we're saying now what's changing? It's not the nefesh which is changing, but rather it's the kalim of the nefesh. He says these kalim of the nefesh are different than machshava dibra ma'isa. Sheina oris v'keiches hamalbishim mamish es hanefesh k'mei levusha mechasa. A garment. What's a garment? A garment covers up. You have a great sunlight that's coming into the room, so you have a curtain that covers it. Garments cover. Aval seichel amidus heina oris ma'atzmis hanefesh. The seichel amidus, they are a light of the atzmis of the nefesh. Ve'inu levushin mamish. They're not garments, ella tikunin, but rather they're actual ornaments. They're like jewelry. That the atzmius of the nefesh is enclosed in the seichel amidus, and the seichel amidus bring out what the nefesh is all about. Tikun, atachshut, just like we see by a ornament, by a jewelry, which makes the person, beautifies the person. Shemiskashit boy u'misnoy, makes a person beautiful. Okay, so the Rebbe says, Yuvan. So now we just explained the way that the nefesh of a person works. That a person has a nefesh, and this nefesh has seichel amidus, and seichel amidus is like a jewelry of a person that, just like jewelry beautifies a person, the seichel amidus bring out the beauty of the nefesh. So to understand, so once we understand this, now we can understand what is the idea of the Yud Sfiris Shinikra, which they're called Tikunin, which are called ornaments. Hainu Chachmo Midas Tatzilus. This refers to the level of Chachmo and Midas of the world of Atzilus, Iu v'Garmei Chad, which they and their kelim are one. Aval Biyah. When it comes to biyah, himchinas levushin mamish, they are levushin. Baleim amar levushin tikunin loin. So the Rebbe is saying like this: when it comes to the level of atzilus, so that's like ornaments. That's like jewelry. Just like jewelry, it's one with the actual person. So too, when it comes to the level of atzilus, the atzilus and the kelim of atzilus are one. Biyah. When it comes to the lower level, that's like levushim, that's like garments, which garments you could change, so it's a lower level. He says, Kihine, behold, Antu Chakim, we started off that Pasach Leo, Antu Chad, and then we say, Antu Chakim, you are wise. What does that mean? Pirish. Antu, what does it mean? Antu, Hainu, Or Ein Seif. Chakim, so we're saying like this, Antu Chakim, you are wise. Ant refers to the level of Or Ein Seif. Chakim shenimshach b'chinas chachma, which goes down to the level of chachma. Al derech, like we say, b'makom shat amitzik dulasei. The Rebbe says in Tanya, which he quotes the Gemara, that wherever you find the greatness of Hashem, you find also the humility. So you have the level of Arin Seif, Antu Chad. You have the level of Arin Seif that come down in the level of chachim, which you bring the Arin Seif into the level of Chachma. However, Vadayin in a Chakim b'Chachma idea, but nevertheless, even though Arin Seif comes in the level of Chachma, but it only comes in the level of Chachma idea. Sorry, Vadayin in a Chakim b'Chachma idea, but nevertheless, even though the Arin Seif comes to the level of Chachma, but it's not a Chachma that we actually have an understanding. Ela shnikra chakim. So if it's a chachma that we don't understand, so why are you calling it a chachma? Chachma means it's a wisdom that you understand. So you're saying it's a chachma. So he says, because this level, the chachma of Atzilus, is the source of all the chachma. Umi menu, and from it, amshachas chachma bebiyah, you could draw down the level of chachma and biyah. Hagam she'ein arei chachma debriya, even though the chachma of Atzilus is be'ein arei to the chachma of bria, because you came to Asiya, and for sure it's be'ein arei to the chachma of Atzila. There's nikra b'shem chakim al shem zeh. Nevertheless, the Zohar still calls this level of chachma very safe chachma. Antu chakim. Why? Because this chachma is the source of all the other chachmas. Okay, we'll stop here. Have a good day.